I'm just very, very surprised to see it. $2 billion with no explanation within the bill over how the $2 billion is going to be controlled. The company's not even created, and what are you going to buy shares in? There's no company yet.
Senator, you are one of the most precise and best, you're one of the most precise questioners I face, and have a very, very strong financial background. And I really appreciate that. And I think that scrutiny is important.
Support their friends. Probably someone's going into the Gates Foundation and the whole truth, because she's in there like a dirty shirt.
Freeland is like a dirty shirt.
What I would say in terms of the Canada Growth Fund is what I hear from Canadians and from Canadian businesses, especially in wake of the Inflation Reduction Act, is Canada has to move fast, and Canada has to move faster than we have hitherto. So we are moving quickly to structure the Canada Growth Fund. We're going to be fully transparent in how we stand it up, and details are going to be forthcoming in the coming weeks and months. But I really believe, given the hundreds of billions of dollars that the U.S. is deploying, we cannot allow the U.S. to suck all of that investment south of the border.
Part 4 of Division 1 should be more properly developed, and the corporation should be created. You're saying pay you the $2 billion. What are you going to do with it? The company's not even created. We don't know anything about the company. I'm very disappointed in the bill. Yeah.
She's in the laundry. I don't know.
The old saying, she's in there like a dirty shirt.
Chrystia Freeland is in there like a dirty shirt. So she is getting talking to in Senate about where's this $2 billion? Well, it's $2 to $18 billion or whatever it was. Where's the money going? The corporation doesn't even exist. You want to buy shares, 2 billion or more shares? You guys got to see this footage of Freeland. It is absolutely ridiculous. She can't even answer the question. Why doesn't the company exist? Where is the mandate? What is the description? And Freeland just keeps going, well, the U.S. is investing tons of money in stuff like this, and we need to do it too. Fast, we got to move at the speed of science.
I want to talk about Part 4, Division 1 on the Canada Growth Fund. And I have some concerns about that section of the bill. It's going to provide $2 billion to you as minister to buy shares in a corporation which does not exist. There's no legislation which tells us anything about this yet to be created corporation. We don't know anything about the composition of the board or even whether there will be a board. There's nothing to tell us about the financial controls that will be exercised over the $2 billion. And there's nothing to indicate what the governance structure is going to be. And equally concerning, there's a section there in that part of the bill that says that the $2 billion isn't the most that's going to be paid out. It leaves it quite open that there could be future monies coming out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund, and there's no limit on it. So what I don't understand is why, if you're going to establish a fund with money of that magnitude, why isn't there a separate bill which would outline the specifics of the company, and also what the company's going to do, what the mandate is, what the objectives are, what the board composition is going to be? So it's really concerning to see $2 billion going out with an explanation. I think there were 17 lines there, and it leaves it quite open that additional monies can be paid out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So why is there not a separate piece of legislation?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for focusing on what I actually believe is one of the most important elements of this. Was introduced in the budget and elaborated on in the fall economic statement, and something that I see as one of the most important elements of our green transition. The Canada Growth Fund will actually be capitalized at $15 billion. And the objective is for that government money to pull in private capital at a ratio of at least 3-1. It will be managed by professionals. We understand that we need to have actual investment professionals do this work. It's going to do perform some very sophisticated jobs in the green transition, including contracts for difference, which we are hearing from investors in Canada and outside Canada is a really important element to ensure that people have the confidence in our carbon pricing system to invest in it. And I'll just add one more thing. I do want to hear your next question, Senator. But to the question of why are we doing it now, I would say to you two things. One, the green transition, we have to act quickly. But from my perspective, the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act added to the urgency with which Canada needs to act. They are deploying hundreds of billions of dollars to invest in the green transition. We need to move really, really fast. And so getting this fund in place quickly is more important than ever.
But buy on emergency.
The urgency, the urgent. You got to do this quick. We got to invest $2 billion right now. We're going to miss out on opportunities because the U.S. has taken all the opportunities. Joe Biden, he's ahead of us. We got to follow him real quick. Right? Like that.
Yep.
That's right.
He's sure worth following.
Yes. The globalist.
Oh, I can't believe that they're doing it. And they will get away with it, too.
Because there's no opposition, because the NDP is the Liberals, the Green Party is the Liberals, the Conservatives don't have enough seats. Where are all of these Canadians who voted for these Liberals? And then, of course, the ones that voted for NDP, where you stand? It's like, hey, we didn't vote for Liberal. Why are you Liberal? Anyways, guys, just makes you angry. This bill, what is this new bill?
Minister, you can't put the fund in place. You're saying, give me the $2 billion, I'll buy some shares, but the company doesn't even exist. The company doesn't exist, and you're giving us all this information verbally. If that's the mandate of this soon to be or this corporation you're talking about, why isn't it in the legislation? I mean, you know, we're looking at this. There's 17 lines there to justify spending at least $2 billion. And then it leaves it wide open for there to be additional appropriations coming out of the Canada Revenue Fund. Like, I'm just very, very surprised to see it. $2 billion with no explanation within the bill over how the $2 billion is going to be controlled. The company's not even created, and what are you going to buy shares in? There's no company yet.
Senator, you are one of the most precise and best, you're one of the most precise questioners I face and have a very, very strong financial background. And I really appreciate that. And I think that scrutiny is important.
I remember
Canadian public, us people,
stealing from us.
And they're not even telling us where they're spending it. It is so wrong.
Yeah, Freeland's stealing billions. I mean, we're talking a lot of money here, and they act like $1 billion is nothing. And well, now everything costs so much. If you look at a marketplace to buy stuff, it's amazing. A car 10 years ago that was worth $5,000. Now that same car, like a 1990 300ZX, could have been $5,000, and now it's $15,000. And everything is the value of money. If you had $100,000 in the bank, literally now you have like 40 or 50 grand in the bank in terms of value. Everything is valueless thanks to these liberal assholes. Irnieracing News, guys.
What I would say in terms of the Canada Growth Fund is what I hear from Canadians and from Canadian businesses, especially in wake of the Inflation Reduction Act, is Canada has to move fast, and Canada has to move faster than we have hitherto. So we are moving quickly to structure the Canada Growth Fund. We're going to be fully transparent in how we stand it up, and details are going to be forthcoming in the coming weeks and months. But I really believe, given the hundreds of billions of dollars that the U.S. is deploying, we cannot allow the U.S. to suck all of that investment south of the border.
Part Part 4 of Division 1 should be more properly developed, and the corporation should be created. You're saying, pay you the $2 billion. What are you going to do with it? You don't. The company's not even created. We don't know anything about the about the company. I'm very disappointed in the bill. Yeah.
First, it will explode, though. They will not get away with it in the end. I do believe that.
Who is getting the money? You know, Klaus Schwab and the globalists, which Freeland is a part of. We already know she's part of the WEF. So, what is the agenda?
What is the agenda?
You gotta laugh at this because it makes you so angry how Canada is just going, you know, it's a sinking Titanic.
And us as taxpayers are supposed to be paying for this, and we don't even know what we're buying.
And yet you can't even get the road between Merritt and the North End paved with all the potholes. Because it's not part of the regulated highway that you were saying yesterday?
Oh, apparently.
Yes. So it's not actually going towards the roads. And in fact, if you looked at the budget, what it is to keep the infrastructure of the roads going, everyone keeps saying, oh, you're paying for the roads. Every time it's like, well, we pay 60% of our dollars in taxes. You know, there's income tax, there's obviously the taxes on things you buy new, then you pay tax on tax on tax on your fuels and everything else. It's 60+% of your money goes to taxes, even when you're lower income. And everyone, their excuse, the liberal excuse is, well, you got to, for the roads, for the roads.
To explain, removing Justin Trudeau is only the beginning. It is the start to removing an unjust parliament and an unjust court system. In 2019, Parliament removed the spread of false news from the criminal code, just 1 year before the pandemic of 2020. And then 18 years before that, in 2001, the Supreme Court of Canada reaffirmed something called judicial notice, where a man taking the title of judge usurps the right of God and declares fact without evidence or proof. The Supreme Court of Canada said that a judge, by declaring judicial notice, can dispense with the need for evidence, so long as that non-scientist judge thinks that something is clearly uncontroversial and beyond reasonable dispute. Once upon a time, that the earth was the center of the universe used to be an uncontroversial fact. It was beyond reasonable dispute. Back then, the earth being the center of the solar system and the universe was probably on mainstream news. And then those judges, hundreds of years ago, could declare judicial notice that the earth was the center of everything. Is this still a fact? Can man be trusted? Can a judge be trusted? Today, judicial notice combined with the removal of spreading false news from the criminal code. What does that do to society? What kind of world does that create? One could almost think that by flooding the media with falsehoods and then having non-scientist judges declare those falsehoods to be fact using judicial notice, well, that would be the recipe for a court system built on lies. And then a government built on lies. Lies that are only possible thanks to Parliament and the Supreme Court. But does this problem go back even further than the 2001 Supreme Court? Let me ask this. How many of us are free? How many hours a day do we work for someone other than ourselves or our family? Does a 30% tax mean that 1/3 of our day is spent enriching someone else? Like a politician? A government bureaucracy? the Queen? But what if it did not end there? After giving 1/3 of your labor to someone else, 1/7 of what you have left, 1/7 of your purchases, and 1/7 of your food is taken as well through sales taxes. 15% of everything. And then, carbon taxes. Half the fuel you use for the privilege of spending 1/3 of your day feeding the government gets taken as well. Then 1/3 of the labor you use to heat your home also goes to heat a senator's summer house. And in the future, how much of the air we breathe do they plan to carbon tax? 20%? 30%? And for what reason? Climate change? When every time in the Earth's history that had a higher atmospheric CO2, there was also a higher biomass. Greater rainforests, larger animals, giant fauna. Carbon dioxide is plant food. What kind of barren death cult would demonize that which makes plants grow? Those who have greenhouses may know of a secret, that if you want your plants to grow faster, larger, and more productive, you can do so by adding CO2 to the greenhouse. And that greenhouse effect, where supposedly there is a pane of CO2 like a pane of glass above us that lets light in and then reflects it back down like a one-way mirror. Does that actually exist? When someone finally turns CO2 into a one-way mirror, please let me know. For that invention would surely win a Nobel Prize. So, if 50% or more of your labor goes to the enrichment of someone else, what would you call that? Slavery, perhaps? How did we get here? Have we been deceived? And what are the foundations of this deception? Could we have been cheated starting from the very ground we stand upon? When you want some land to grow food and raise your family, what do? Do you buy land? Do you pay money for land so that you may work and raise your family? Do you enslave yourself to a mortgage? And who are you paying? Do you think the Creator wants your money? Do you think Mother Earth wants your mortgage? Does the universe want your debt? Or is it someone else on the other side of an ocean who wants your money? Does she take your money for something she got for free 250 years ago? And then in her greed, she makes you pay taxes for having that land, living on that land, and keeping that land for your children. That is the profane foundation upon which today, this day, was built. Built by a greed that is unsatisfied by your money, ungrateful for your labor. And now, it wants the very body that your soul lives in. It wants to dictate what you are allowed to put into that vessel that was given to you by the Creator. This greed wants to dictate how much you are allowed to live. It wants to monitor and tax your every breath. Have you ever read the patent about turning your body's activity into a cryptocurrency. They already want to turn you into money, disposable money. And what of those machines, those manacles some of us wear on our wrists? You know, those armbands that measure your heartbeat, how often you turn over in your sleep, and how much oxygen you consume. What do you think is the long-term plan for those shackles? Today it's injections, tomorrow food, and the day after tomorrow, slavery. The media already demonizes food. What you're eating has a carbon footprint. You have to pay carbon taxes for eating. They want you to pay a carbon tax for the privilege of living. Does the Creator collect taxes? Does Mother Earth take away from your table? Or does the Creator give? Does Mother Earth feed? And like any parent, happiness, enlightenment, and gratitude is all that is asked for in return. Such is a world founded upon love. Such is the foundation that the Creator and the earth want us to build upon. But beware of the merchants of greed. They will come to you with bribes. They will give one group favors, promises, agreements, and then none to another. Do this, they will say, and in exchange we will give you something that the others won't have. That is how the merchants of greed work. That is how they divide us. That is how they corrupt everyone they touch. There are no others. It is us. Only us. The merchants of greed are well dressed. They carry titles of power. And they also hold implements of violence. But fear not, they are weak. For if they cannot divide us into others, we win.